thank you for being here, A. And B, I think that's a testament to some of the sentiments that were shared today about aligning yourself with the right people, right? Many of you at this point in your journey, you are your business. Thank you for being here. Thank you to all of our speakers, and please activate, be visible, get out your checkbook, invest in Nevada and in each other.
All right, so quickly before we get to the slides, I just want to say we're super excited to be here. And before I leave, I hope that every single one of you will give me a card because you are part of my Las Vegas team, right? So I've got a couple of your cards already. And I'm very, very excited. A colleague of mine and I, another colleague here today from San Luis Obispo, launched an angel conference 3 years ago, and I was in her network and helped her do that. And she called me a few months ago and said, hey, let's try to go. I was like, yeah, okay, let's try to go. We started asking around, and people were like, no, just had to come do this. I'm like, what? Yeah, maybe. So anyway, Las Vegas is our very first contract to deliver an angel conference. I'm super, super excited about that. I want to talk to you a little bit about that. But I want to talk first about working with women. Sylvia, once you come up here, I know your foot is broken and you stuffed it into that shoe.
Oh, no.
But I think as a framework for women, I'm going to be a little bit all over the place, and I'm doing that on purpose. I promise when I come to teach entrepreneurship and investing, very razor focused, but not today. That's not what we're doing today. So there's this thing called the Four Agreements. It was a book written by Don Miguel, who was released. It's like 4 things, right? These are my lessons in life. I applied this with my family. I made them. My children learned this when they were little. We used to practice at the dinner table, and it's become my mantra for how I do work and how I show up in the world. So don't take it personal. Don't make assumptions. Do your best. Be impeccable with your words and deeds. I have the deeds. So 10 years ago, if I'd have met Sylvia Mom, I'd have been like this. What do she think she is? People are like, And I think sometimes that's how we show up with women, right? When I adopted this new way of thinking about don't take it personal, be impeccable with your words and deeds, don't make assumptions, do your best. I heard about Sylvia Mom 2 years before I ended up in San Diego. I've been in San Diego 2 years, so I've known about her for a little while. When I got to San Diego, I was like, oh yeah, I was. I started poking her. And the old me would have been like, fuck her, she won't call me back. Like, she is. Right? And then finally, we meet somewhere at an event. One of my entrepreneurs, like we finally actually made a connection. It took
Everybody wanted me to get to know you too. You need to know because she's new, you know what? Like, know everything you need to get to know her.
But she looks at me and she goes, oh my God, you're my best friend! And grabbed me and hugged me. And I was like, she's like, okay, I gotta go teach this thing in Spanish. And then that was it, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
And we've been best friends.
Yeah.
But this is a different way that's my whole example, sorry. And I don't know. And she really does have a broken foot that she stuffed into a heel. Like, I don't know what she's thinking. So, anyway, thank you. The way women used to show up with each other, and the way I see women cut their teeth in engineering and chemistry, you know, in the 50s and 60s and 70s, the stories that they have to tell. My own story straight out of grad school, believe me, I got a list. Like, I cut my teeth in Kansas, in a rural part of Kansas, which probably feels a lot like some of the things you see. Like, I had somebody actually tell me, you know, we know the suffrage movement was a thing, but they didn't pass it here. Like, I had a guy tell me that. He's like, you don't think they'll mind if you're in the room as long as you're quiet and take notes. Oh, wow, you know? Like, so this is the place where I cut my teeth. And the story that women tell about that hardship shows up in the bias that Sylvia was talking earlier. Like, I am guilty of it. Like, all women are guilty of it. And if you cut your teeth in a really tough way, or you survived engineering in the 70s, 80s, 90s, like, yeah, you got stories, but you know what? You did that hard work, and we're in a different place. And for us to have really, really high degree of trust, critical, right? So, Sylvia and I are totally wrong with each other. We actually are sharing a room. And that whole, like, being like, I threw pajamas in this morning as a last minute thing. I totally forgot about that. That was not something that happened 10 years ago. And when she got to the hotel and I'd made the reservation, they didn't have it at the hotel, and she calls me at 10:30 at night. I spent 2.5 hours, or about 2 hours last night figuring it out, because I want to be impeccable with my words. I want to do my best. I wanted that to work out for Sylvia last night. She still broke about $400 check for the last night. We'll get that sorted out. But it's like these kinds of things where we don't get mad at each other, but we hold each other up in different ways. Like I think that's our job as women, and that's the role models we need to be for our kids. Like I don't know if your parents, most of us are parents. I have like a whole half of those running around. But I think it's so important as women that we really jump into that kind of space where we're not going to be judgmental. Like I used to be like, well, at least I'm the tallest girl in the room. I'm pretty strong in this room. Or, I had all this internal conversation that was about my own insecurities, but adopting this other method of how I'm showing up in the world has made all the difference in my ability to get work done and to really see things through. So, all right. I have a couple of slides. So this is an interesting room. There were 17 entrepreneurs in the room, and I only heard 2 say they were investors. But I know some of you are actually accredited. So let's go over what that means really quickly, because I'm counting on you. If you can't step on the angel side today, I want to see you do it in the next 3 or 4 years. I want to see you get there. And it's not as hard as you might think. So to be an accredited investor, if you haven't heard this terminology, you have to have $1 million in assets that don't include your home. If you are a school teacher in the state of Nevada and you've been around for 20 years, your retirement is likely worth that. If you have finished with the Navy, who's the Navy person here? Your retirement value, if you did your 20 years, your retirement packages probably puts you in that category, right? If you own a set of rentals, even if you owe money on it, if the asset is worth $1 million, there's some creative ways to work around that, and there's a way to do an exception. You can ask for an exception to be considered an accredited investor, and I think probably Cindy or Kristen or somebody can talk more to that, because I kind of try and stay out of that part, because I'm focused on working with accredited investors. So that's one of the definitions. The other definition is if you make $200,000 a year, or your household brings in $300,000 a year for the last 2 years, that puts you as an accredited investor. And you don't have to take a test, and there's not like a certificate you apply for or a form to fill out. That makes you an accredited investor, right? So most of us are already in that space. If we've just been around before and haven't had like a major medical catastrophe or something. All right, I have this set of slides I put together for something else. And maybe I'll stand here. Is it on? Oh, I have the same clicker.
That's a website.
I usually can do it when it's okay. Did you figure it out? All right. Okay. We'll go back. What is the bottom?
If you hit the side button on accident, it'll freeze.
I just went backwards. Okay. This is available on the internet. Actually, those are my stats. This is available on the internet, tinyurl.com/brinkpitch101. You can have it right now. And there's some cool stuff in here. I think you saw this earlier today, right? This is Angel Capital Association puts this out. There's a couple of these that are really, really great. Just quickly, most angel investors have a net worth of less than $5 million. Right? So when I started doing this like 20 years ago, I would think, oh, angel investors, they make more, and they some coffee, and a tennis lesson. That's not really how it works. Most of the angel investors I work with have day jobs and are self-made. They got there the hard way. So you cannot bullshit an investor most of the time because they actually have a meter for that. It's like crazy. There were about 300,000 angels in the United States. They did about 77,000 deals last year. They invested $24 billion, right? So angels, and this number keeps going, angels are the powerhouse. Individual investors will do a check of 10 to 50 million towards a deal that is in the neighborhood of an average of 345,000.
Not million.
Oh, I did that yesterday with something. I was like, what, $121 million? No, forgot that. $10,000 to $15,000 $50,000 for an average check size, for an average deal size of 345, which means you almost always see early stage angels working their money together in some way, either through a fund, a network, a legal instrument like an SPD or a PPM, and the average valuation of the company is 2.7 million. Average valuation of a company in the Bay Area is around 6 million right now. It's about 3 million in San Diego. It's about 1.5 million in Boise. And I think Vegas and Boise are pretty close. Like 1.5 million, I think is probably. So there's some part of it that is just geographic. And I think in San Diego we threw out the outliers because we have these like crazy, stupid biotech companies that are actually valued at like millions. So, all right. Here's my big why. World's in big trouble. This is me on my soapbox for just a second. Not political, like I don't even care where you stand on politics, but if we're going to feed the number of people that we've created and deal with the garbage that we've created and have better things happen in our schools and in our society, we've got problems to solve. And I don't think we can work our way out of it. Hard work isn't going to get us there. We might invent our way out. Like, so innovation, I think, is the path. We'll leapfrog our way through some of the problems that we face. One of the companies that I've been working with is a seed company. They figured out to hybridize a seed in a way that increases yields by 30% and extends shelf life, right? That's a seed. And they tested in 14 crops. Is that promising about how we're going to feed the world? Ooh, same amount of land, less water, more yields, better shelf life. Those are things that are super, super critical to solving big problems. And so these are some of the UN's 17 global, potential disasters that are headed our way. And so not a doom and gloom story from my perspective, but this is all about opportunity and places for us to really make a difference. And so, because you're mostly entrepreneurs, I actually switched up what I was going to talk about entirely. Because you're mostly entrepreneurs in here, I'm going to talk about debt. And I'm going to talk about it from the investor perspective, because I want you to hear it that way. And this is what I spend like a ton of my time doing. All right, so let me pause here, because everybody always likes to get a good look at what really goes into investor debt. And let me just say for just a quick second who I am and where I fit. Right, so I've been doing this about 20 years. I'm an angel investor with my family, which means I invest with my dad and my brother, and we only invest in things that are within a few hours driving where my dad lives, and only in ag, and pretty much only in things that improve the ability to farm in rocky, sandy soil at high altitude. Right? So if we can't make the ranch better, the ranch I grew up on in Colorado, it isn't going to get a second look. And then the next one is like my dad's going to make an evaluation based on the handshake and whether or not he's got access to the young person's parents, because twice he has gone and like made sure the investment came out solid by bustling somebody's dad. That's right? Angel investors show up in all kinds of ways. I'm still not sure he knows what I do because I keep looking at the deals and telling him stuff. He's like, I don't know, it's for management. There's more to it. All right. So I grew up in a cow ranch in Colorado, and I had this big ag background, and so I got this hard work ethic and all those kinds of things. And long story short, I ended up in innovation about 18, 20 years ago, doing startup work, and I was as an economic development director of a community that didn't want growth, but they were okay, but they wanted a vibrant economy. And so we really worked the startup scene and really transformed that community to think about the entire community as one huge incubator. If we could get your company to about 300 employees, we needed you to go away. And then when you did, we would try and fill it with smaller companies and grow them over time. So that's how you deal with that kind of a scenario. But it positioned me to be able to keep doing this work. So I've done this kind of a few places on the West Coast. Now in San Diego, we opened the Innovation Center at University of San Diego, technically a small business development center, focused on innovation. There's only a handful of those in the country. Nevada doesn't have one. I don't know, we're kind of with you, because I'd love to see one here. And we opened our doors January 2018. Within 8 months, we were the #1 accelerator in San Diego, competing against 70 incubators, accelerators, and co-working spaces. And today we are serving 685 companies, which is about 10% of the startups in San Diego County. San Diego County is 3.5 million people, so that's roughly double the size of your state or something. No, it's roughly the same population as your state, and it's condensed in like handful of square miles, it's like that. All right, so hopefully while I was talking, you were reading and trying to figure out what I was doing here. When we give a deck, we kind of say this is a good standard. If you just say pitch deck checklist on the internet, you can find something, and it's pretty much going to be this variety thing. But if you look at this list a little bit more carefully, there's only this one, number 6, that deals with your product. And what we coach investors all the time is that all your babies are ugly. And we shouldn't care about the products. And because it's easy to get lost in an entrepreneur's passion and like there's the whole part is like do the technical aspects of it work, yes or no? But then the rest of it is about, can this team deliver? Can they execute on a plan? Is the market big enough? Is there a path to the market? Do we have like a go-to-market strategy that makes sense and a customer acquisition program that makes sense? And does the money make sense? Like if you show me that like you're gonna do a steady like steep climb growth curve, and I'm giving you tranches of money over the next 3 years, and you can't show me like that your growth is steady and flat, that doesn't usually happen, right? Usually investors are gonna give you money, you're gonna use it to mitigate some risk, and then it's gonna give you this leapfrog opportunity, and then it's gonna go up for a little while, and then we're gonna do another chunk of money, and it's gonna give you some scale. Because at the end of the day, investors are evaluating risk. So if we go back to the slides that Kristen shared, all those things, those are, investors are looking at what is the financial risk, what is the team risk, what is the exit risk, so all the market risk. They're just, what are the risks, and how much money is it going to cost to mitigate the risk? And can this team, entrepreneurs should never operate alone, can this team deliver on it? So when you put your pitch together, try to keep that in mind that investors are looking for a bunch of things and only a very tiny little part of this actual product. Good investors. Early investors will fall in love with your product. You really need the more sophisticated ones to give you good advice and help you overcome the obstacles that you're going to hit. So, balance. A little bit of all this. All right. Also, another thing that investors see and look at things just slightly different. So I like this one because there's only a couple places where there's really good overlap. So entrepreneurs are looking, they want to start with their technical solution and work through their business plan, and then the market opportunity, the team, and their ask. And investors are looking at it slightly different. How does your thing solve a problem, and is the problem real? What's the competition look like, and how does that competition translate to a potential exit strategy? Because I've been doing this a long time, and I've worked on 3 IPOs in the last 18 years, or something like that. It's really small, the number of IPOs they need to do. So when somebody comes in, they're like, oh yeah, we're going to do IPO. Probably you're not. You're probably going to do a merger or acquisition. Like, you are either going to be acquired because somebody else with money is going to come buy you, or you're going to raise a boatload of money and you're going to go acquire other companies and become a bigger company, right? So it's almost always merger and acquisition is the exit strategy. And then the team, scary teams are ones that are loaded with scientists and no business people, right? Oh, we have 11 PhDs. Really, what are you going to use this money for? We're not doing study, right? So investors will run from that unless you can say, hey, look, I know we have like 18 PhDs in our program here among the 12 people on our management team, but 4 of us have done successful startups and taken companies through exit. There's a way to get around that if you're a bunch of smart hands, but investors usually would like to see gritty stuff over academic credentials. And then finally, entrepreneurs are looking they're looking for money to keep the doors open, and investors are really looking at return. right? So similar, like these things sort of line up, there's a nice continuum of how it flows together, but the intention and the hopes are a little bit different. All right. I put together 3 slides. I have a fake company. My fake company is Smooth Blender. That's me. I make the best blender. I'm going to tell you all about it. This competition slide shows a handful of things, and you usually see a competition slide this way, or you see it like as a cross that's 2 sets of variables, one on the x-axis, one on the y-axis, and they're showing you how they measure up against their competitors. In either case, these things on the slide are the 2 variables that you use are one of 3 things, because there's only 3 ways you can differentiate yourself in the market. It's on speed, quality, price. Those are the 3 things. There's not any other things. Customer service is given. Like, don't say you have better customer service than everybody, because investors are like, well, that's great, see you later. So, speed, quality, and price. You have to be able to do it faster, or better, or cheaper to be competitive. If you want to be disruptive, you have to do all of them at the same time. Faster, better, cheaper. All right, so in my little pretend competition slide here, I used this method, and I said on speed, price, and quality, because I'm trying to drive this point home, I do better than my competition, and I have scalable manufacturing, and my blender is self-washing. You use it, stick it back in the cupboard, it's ready to go. Okay. One, there's a technical question there about how that's possible, but we're just going to say for now. Believe me. All right, my great thing. Now, I also a lot of times will see these like rather than just green and red marks on something like price, you can drop in the MSRP. Or a lot of times you'll see this as the COGS, and you try and identify what the COGS are and be able to show that you have, you're more competitive, or you have a better margin, or there's something there, right? Like you can add in numbers here instead, or numbers below, but visually this gives the, visually I've done a couple of things. For the investor, there's this subliminal thing that, hey, this is on the right-hand side, and it's the trajectory is up, and it's in green. Those are all positive things. Like, I just made those up, right? Like I just did that. But I'm also saying something that works with the way we condition our brains. Yeah?
What is the speed you use? Speed of market? How fast?
Oh, and this one, like, so in my fake example here, speed could be, it blends faster. You know, this is a, and so this is also me saying a functional difference between function and benefit, right? So especially this happens with software. You see a software company and they're like, yeah, we've got these features and like we can do this and this and this, and really investors want to know benefits. Like, how does this solve the problem? Like, how does make something better? Like, don't tell me the technical aspects or the specs of something. Like, tell me how this improves the world. All right, so competition slide. Then this is the use of funds slide. So this is the ask slide. This is typically the last one in the deck. And I'm saying Smooth Blender is going to use 2/3-ish of the money for marketing and sales. Right? So investors like to see it this way because if they're looking for return, and let's say they're looking for a 10x return in 5 years, can you do something in research that's going to generate that kind of revenue for the company? Probably not. Can you do something in financials and like negotiating with your vendors and that's going to help you get there? Probably not. But if you can fund the sales in some capacity, that's where you get that big bump in return, right? So it used to be that you could come in and you could say like, yeah, we're doing some R&D and we've got prototyping to do, and some, but 3D printers, CAD designs, maker spaces, like all those things have lowered the playing field. Investors, at least at this stage of the game, they're looking for, at this stage, if you're looking for money, they're looking at, they want to see at least an MVP and some good idea that the market traction, that there's some indicator of traction, right? Sydney, my math doesn't work, does it? I see you back there with your squinty eyes. I know the math doesn't work. I need to update the slide. All right, so on this one, and I'm gonna pop over to something else to talk about this evaluation piece. We usually see deals happen two ways: convertible notes or equity. Convertible note is great if your company is early and you don't have sales and you can't really easily establish valuation based on the way Kristen kind of walked us through a few minutes ago. Right, so to do a convertible note just means you're kicking that decision about valuation down the road a little bit, but you're going to establish a cap, right? So let's say, I didn't put a cap in here. Should have a cap. Let's say the cap is $5 million, right? So we say this stays in play unless we go over a valuation of $5 million, right? Let's say something crazy stupid happens and you end up investing early in a unicorn. That doesn't happen if you're only investing in things that make your mind sneaky sweat a lot. So if you're in a unicorn, it means that your valuation, your shares are going to convert at no more than $5 million, right? Because if let's say you invest $100,000 and the company's worth $1 million, and it's not equity, it's convertible stock down the road, right? So let's say 2 years down the road, something weird happened, and now your $100,000 company is now worth $100 million. So your share of that is, Cindy, some small fraction, less than 1%, 1/10 of 1% or something. That's what your overall. And so, do you really get to take, like $1 million out of your $10,000 investment? Let's be reasonable. We can all get rich together, but we don't have to be down about it. So that's why you end up seeing those caps come into play. And these other things here are like the 20% discount. You only see with convertible note. It basically means you're taking a loan. Convertible note just means you're taking a loan that's going to convert to stock instead of get paid back. Right? So we asked a group of investors the other day, how many of you have ever got a payment on a convertible note? Nobody. How many of you have ever gotten to the conversion point and taken your money back? Doesn't happen very often, right? It doesn't happen very often. So that 20% discount, let's say it's 20% discount on a 2-year convertible note, you either have to raise an extra round of money at 2 years, or you have to usually renegotiate the deal. But if, let's say you get to that 2-year place and you are raising another large round of funds, this 20% discount just means it's a coupon. You get to convert your stock for a 20% off coupon. So if the stock's worth $100 a share, you get it for $80 a share, you get to buy more shares. So, and you reward early investors because they're taking the risk with you, right? You haven't de-risked a whole lot of anything. You're taking really early money. And so some angels betting, they're playing horses or whatever. Well, I guess I could make lots of gambling jokes here, right? I would have to learn some gambling jokes after maybe learn some gambling later, those things that I do. But you want to reward that behavior because they're willing to jump in and take risks with you.
So convertible notes, you're saying are generally used in angel stage? Is that the
Most of the time.
We just had a convertible note on friends and family, and basically,
Yes.
didn't understand them.
Yeah.
And so we ended up going back to the straight offering.
Oh, what a friends and family round. We really like to, so from a cap table perspective, cap table just lists the list of all the people that are participating in the company and have made some kind of deal. Straight equity, let's say you give a family member 1% equity in your company, you're still operating the garage and you have no sales, and it seems like a pretty good, that seems reasonable and fair. But 3 years later, when it's worth $10 million, 1% of that is that's a lot and unreasonable. And there's a whole bunch of things about taking good care of friends and family rounds. You can do it by equity, just make sure you know it's worth it. When you're going for a friends and family round, it's worth it to get a good lawyer, like Cindy would say, again. It's worth it to get a good lawyer to make sure you get those things in place so that you understand the consequence, right? We run a ton of if-then scenarios. If the company never gets bigger than this, still you still have to go to Thanksgiving with these people, and they're going to say, you owe me $1,000, right? They're going to treat it like right? That's really how friends and family works. It becomes painful until you find some way to at least get them even. And if it goes good, then they totally want like big shoulders.
I have a question. Is it even necessary to put that details in the first page? Because I look at the page, usually they just put how much they want and how they will use the money. This is really.
Yeah, so focus your attention on what's in it for the investor. Like, how do you make it easy for them to say yes? So if you say, I want $500,000 and I'm gonna use it for these 12 things, the investor has no way to know. There's no mental math for them to do. There's no negotiation point that they can go to say, how are they gonna get their money back? Or what's the potential upside of it? You know, like some of the best investors I know will hear a whole pitch where they never talk about things, and he's just making money calculations the whole time. They're talking about marketing plans, and he's just doing like he's just calculating like customer acquisition costs. And so if I give you $100,000, how many customers does that buy? What's the return? Like most investors are thinking about things in very quantitative ways. And so if your ask slide doesn't give them any path forward, then you're sort of like, it's almost like cherry picking.
I think one of the things that can get you confused is when you go to these pitches. Like, 2 minutes, 2 minutes, 2 minutes, you first, you second, you third. And you're like, what? And you only get 2 minutes, and of course that's your elevator pitch. If you can't get them on the main benefit, then they're not gonna come along with you. I think maybe that's what you're talking about,
Yeah,
right?
usually they say like in $100,000, 10% exchange. That's simplified, they usually. But
Yeah,
I
then there's
hope-
just more to talk about, right? But what you're trying to do is, like, when we train entrepreneurs, we're training to get through the third meeting. I don't want you to get a second meeting. A second meeting just goes like, oh, yeah, that's not nice, right? But if we can dig into the fundamentals and really understand the stuff that's going on behind the scenes and really build the foundations out, make sure that you've got a market strategy and those kinds of things, then it gives us a much better chance to get through the third meeting. That third meeting is where we start to really dig in deep and start to look at, oh, we're gonna do a term sheet here, what is that gonna look like? You know, we really start to negotiate. So again, the more information that you can put on your ask slide or your use of funds slide that shows how you're gonna mitigate the risks. So one of the things we're gonna do for the angel conference is you're going to have one of the sessions about how you develop your use of funds. Are you telling me I'm not time?
I'm going to ask you to give us a quick, like, 2-minute summary of what the Angel Generating Conference is all about. I see some of our entrepreneurs are actually, their legs are shaking because they have to get out of here.
Okay, all right, so quickly, an angel conference is a way to activate investors. Right, that's the principal point of an angel conference, is to put more money on the ground in a community. And so what we do is we go out and we solicit accredited investors from a whole bunch of different paths and get them all in a room and working together. And we sell them a unit and a fund, right? A bunch of different ways that angel stuff gets structured. We actually physically create a legal structure that's a fund where everybody pays in upfront, right? So let's say that the fund's gonna be $7,000 a unit. Usually to get into a fund, you're paying $50,000 or $100,000 a unit. So this gives a first-time angel investor a chance to play for a very low amount of money. Small risk, right? So I think we're kind of settled, probably units here are gonna be around $7,000. We're gonna take some of that off to run the event and take care of the legal stuff over the course of, we're always gonna average for like 10 years. Just gonna say it's gonna take that long just in case something weird happens. So we set aside $2,000 for that, and then $5,000 goes into a pot. Everybody puts their $5,000 chunks together until we have a pool that works. So we've seen these, San Luis Obispo runs theirs at 100,000. San Diego's on target to do it at $1 million this year. We did 200,000 under, Sylvie was our first fund manager, and we set our sights on $200,000 last year. We put $535,000 around 3 companies at the end of it. All right, so the goal, I think we're gonna set a goal, $100,000 to $200,000 for Las Vegas. That's the goal. If we do better than that, that would be awesome. But we're talking about, that's 20 to 40 accredited investors who agreed to put in 7,000 apiece, 5,000 to the pool. Then we're gonna train entrepreneurs for 3 months. And at the end of that, there's an application deadline, and we hope we'll get 30 or 40 great applications. And then we take those 30 or 40 applications back to that group of investors. And we say, here's the fodder. We put 30 or 40 deals together for you to consider. And you get 3 months to work through them. And at the end of that, we're gonna have a big contest, final pitches, and there's gonna be a winner take all at the end. Somebody's gonna walk away, not with like, put it into 3 little chunks of money or something like that. It's a winner take all event. Somebody's gonna walk away with $100,000 or $200,000 in investment on that fund. The investors don't know ahead of time. They actually hear the final pitches, they go off in a room by themselves, and they make that decision like right before it's announced.
After they've done months of due diligence, they have learned how to do due diligence during the instructional period.
And they collated it down.
Yeah, and they've continually narrowed it down to 5 or 6 companies.
Right.
And then they do their final pitches, and then the investors make their decision.
Right, so San Diego, we had 115 applicants, I think 105 deals actually came through at the end. We will take ours, next week they vote, they'll take it from 105 to 24, first cut. Then we've got 50 investors in the room, and the next week, we have 2 nights of pitches, 3-minute pitches, so they're short with slides. And we have 12 companies each night. 50 investors, 12 companies. Like, these are great odds, you never get these for entrepreneurs, right? And then they're gonna go from 24 down to 12. Then we're gonna bring the 12 back, again, 2 nights, longer pitches, 10-minute pitches. 2 nights, 6 companies, 50 investors. Awesome odds. Like, I don't see those anywhere else. Right? Those are really crazy, amazing odds. And then we're gonna narrow it to 6. Then we're gonna take those 6 companies, and we're gonna divide all the investors into teams of 6. You know, each team, a team for each company. And they're gonna spend 4 or 5 weeks just doing due diligence, asking a ton of questions, doing site visits, customer interviews. Like, we're teaching all of that time about how to do due diligence. And then each of those teams will put a report together for the consideration of the whole group. And at the end, those 40, 50 investors are gonna get together, and they're gonna choose one company. Sylvia did a great job. We couldn't choose one, so she just made them put more money on the table, and they did 3.
In like a 2-week span of, you know, because we did so many due diligence, like 6 due diligences. So after we gave out the check, the investors wanted to invest in, you know, at least 2 other ones. So we did a straw poll. We already had the due diligence. We already went through the process that, you know, we've just talked about. So we were able to make decisions in one night. Yeah, as I said at the beginning of my talk, put money down, right? So they were excited. And we got them all, and then we were able to do, I think the biggest thing that Missy said at the beginning was that there's a vehicle. So the Angel Conference has a vehicle, a fund, but then we created SPVs, which is small, special purpose vehicles, to invest in 2 other entrepreneurs in a night.
So we did, it took us 3 months to get to $200,000, and it took us 45 minutes to do another $335,000.
Yeah.
Well, by then, they knew.
They knew, they knew
Not
they were
only
ready.
that, but high degree of trust. They learned a ton about a bunch of different industries. Like, this is a really powerful thing. So what I need is I need a card from each of you, and I need you to think about who you know who meets that accredited investor qualification. We're not asking for anything up front. We're just asking to just go have coffee and talk about this idea and see if it's a good fit. So we anticipate that between Maggie, Jeff, and I, my partner, and Raj, and probably him, maybe even some of you, we'll probably do 400 or 500 coffee meetings in the next couple of months.
Do you charge the entrepreneurs to pitch? Like, do they have an application fee? Do they put it, what do they have to do?
So the question is, do we charge an application fee for the entrepreneurs? And the first time I did this was 2008, and we did not. And it was horrible because we got all these terrible deals. A small application fee, $99, $149, $200, something like that, is just enough of a filter that you get rid of all the things that are not really businesses, but are very, very excited people.
But you get scholarships because
We do scholarships, so anybody who won a pitch contest, or if you work through somebody, like we let a couple of the universities that have very active programs, pick an entrepreneur to say, like we had a few ways that if there was some way in our community that we could vet somebody through a contest or through a professor or something like that, we would waive that application fee because we felt like they were vetted. And that gave us a bunch of different things. All of those organizations that are part of those different pitch contests became advocates for their companies and helped us promote the event and get people engaged. So
We are not about, there are other places out there that charge exorbitant fees for entrepreneurs to pitch. I think that is bogus in my, you can quote me, I don't care, right? I mean, I think that's bogus. And this is about investors and entrepreneurs and creating community. So really the fee is so minimum. I just wanted to put my.
I'll just say that, one example, like, Southern California Curiosity Group. You guys probably have one here?
Yeah.
Koretsu. I probably.
I don't know that there's one here, but they certainly have them in the Bay Area.
And Seattle.
If you want to do the one in Southern California, it's $4,500. You write a check for that, and then they're like, well, instead of a meeting ends, maybe 50 people will show up, but maybe 5 will show up, and you don't get, and there's no guarantee. And you're paying that fund no matter what. Black Dog Ventures charges $700 for their room, and they will put you in front of accredited investors, but they won't guarantee that they're active. Right? So I found that one out the hard way because I showed up and I'm like, well, that's not fair. You called me one of your 40 accredited investors for the day, and I know that none of these companies are in Colorado at a high altitude doing like sand and rocky stuff. I know that. And it was an unfair thing, right? Because those investors paid that money thinking they were up in front of 40 active accredited investors. So, I mean, this is one where not only that's not the real magic. Because it's a happy year of my life to put one of these on every year. And for $200,000, that is totally not worth it. I can find lots of better ways to fund a company. Within 6 months, we had the companies that participated last year had raised $18 million. So the companies who went through our process, because they were working together and they were learning stuff along the way, and they had all these investor engagements, they were able to go on and raise big sums of money. We haven't looked at it since the 6-month mark, but I know just our winner has raised $6 million since March 15th.
And she's leveraged the win.
So, okay, so the 3 companies that we funded last year, Aquacycle, woman-led, she took the whole thing, she was able to walk away with $295,000, water tech. So and you want to talk about not sexy, she's wastewater treatment, okay? Not sexy. Really cool business though. The second one was ProGuru, an ag tech company that does a soil sensor for hydration. And then the third one was Vivid Genomics, a biotech company that has a really novel solution, but a very long play in Alzheimer's.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so we got a really, really cool biotech.
Women-led.
Oh, also women-led. Two of the 3 were women-led. The one that was led by a man, his partner was Indian. And in the ag tech space, that is more diverse than any other woman founder. So we did not, well, I should say, we did not shoot for that, but that's not true. Sylvia was our fund manager. This is where her heart is. She definitely worked hard for some diversity among our companies.
All of our applications, I mean, there's no bias in them, but they're just good founders and good companies.
And all the evidence, I think Maggie shared earlier, all the evidence suggests that if you have a diverse founder in your team, your company will do better. If you have a diverse investor invest in your company will do better. So there's lots of good reasons why. There's still only, like, what is it, 7% of investors are women?
It's 24% of angel investors are women, and like about 8% of VCs are women.
Yeah. So it's fairly small numbers. Our numbers were higher than that last year. And of the women that participated in our first angel conference in San Diego, 100% of them are back here.
So they keep reapplying.
No,
Our investors.
Our investors.
But that's the ones that were like runners up. Do they go to the next
We had
stage?
companies that, we did not have a rule in place that said if you have applied before, you can't apply again. And so one of the companies that walked away with the cash applied again. We didn't have a rule against it, so there isn't running, but I think there were 12 recent updates to, so last year 96 conferences, this year 105. 12 of the 105 were all part of last year's group, all over the place. Some of them got cut first round, some of them survived all the way to the quarterfinals, which of course. Oh, anyway, I've gone way over my time. Questions, or you guys need to, who do I need to get it back to?
Thank you, Misty, and we will figure out what our name is, and you will receive emails about it. We expect that we'll start with the entrepreneur track in May at some point to culminate. Actually, we're going to start in May, but probably won't actually have active classes going on until after the 4th of July. And then our investors will start in October, early October, and we will all culminate around December 10th.
So please put December 10th, even if you don't apply, it's worth coming to watch. It'll be a great.
9th and 10th. So I think the 9th for our Angel Conference and then for our second Nevada Angel Conference, the second year of that will happen the next day. And we'll bring back our pitch finalists from our grassroots angel growing as the people who pitch at the end of the Senate conference. Some of you asked about Bloom and the co-working space, so I put the address here. It's really not very far from where we are if you want to stop by and see them or copy down the address and contact them the next time that you're around and able to do it. I want to thank you all for coming today, for sticking through it, for adapting as we changed our schedule around. And I will have some assets to send you from some of the speakers today who we promised them to you. Don't expect them for Monday, though. Okay, if anybody else has any general questions, go ahead with them. Otherwise, thank you so much.